Alrighty, guys, it's good to be back on the air. And we are going to be talking tonight about Hugh Freeze. We're going to be talking about Jackson Arnold. We're also going to be talking about Gunnar Stockton, Mike Bobo, and this entire, Georgia situation from the offensive side of the ball. And we're going to be talking about Alabama offense. So we're all going to be talking about, these football teams, these players, these programs, these situations. I think that Auburn is the most interesting place to start. You look at Hugh Freeze as a football coach, and this guy really in his life has been a winner at so many different spots. I mean, this is a guy that was a former high school football coach, believe like at Brentwood Academy, and I'm going to find out exactly where he coached, but essentially Hugh Freeze was a high school winning football coach, high school winning basketball coach, and then I believe he went to Arkansas State. I think he was an offensive coordinator under Gus Malzahn, and then he got the job at Ole Miss, and I mean, the guy just took it and absolutely ran with it. All right, so he had those great recruiting classes. He had Chad Kelly as a quarterback. He had Bo Wallace as a quarterback. He had Laquan Treadwell on that football team. And Ndame Kandike, or the Kandike brothers. He had some talent on defense, but really it was like Treadwell was the massive star of the Hugh Freeze era, and so was like Bo Wallace. Evan Ingram, I think, was also on those teams with Chad Kelly. And they went into Alabama. They beat Alabama at Alabama. They also, what they also did is they also were able to beat Alabama at Ole Miss too, with Bo Wallace, with Katy Perry coming to game day. I mean, these are the types of memories that you have as somebody who grew up in the Northeast and somebody who's around 18 to 19 years old in 2013, 2014, and I'm watching Ole Miss, get all of these football players, get all of these incredible recruits. So Hugh Freeze had success at Auburn or success at Oxford that paralleled Lane. Then we found out that Hugh Freeze was paying these guys. He was paying for players. The NCAA was looking for the smoking gun. They didn't understand why Robert Nkemdiche, the number one defensive end commit in the country, would ever commit to Ole Miss. All right? So looking back at Hugh Freeze, he then had this scandal of, Barney, whatever his name was, the booster, and the boosters going out of control and cheating allegations at Ole Miss. Now, you look at paying players, and it's now legal with NIL, and you also look at the Southeast and the South and SMU and all of these football teams, Alabama. I believe that they all, to some extent, under the table, were doing kind of activities that Ole Miss was doing. So here's Hugh Freeze's entire career, and he's just such a fascinating character in the sport of college football. He's a fascinating character, and then we're gonna get to what ended up transpiring. So he's at Briarcrest a very long time. He's at Ole Miss. His record, he went from Arkansas State as a head coach right to Ole Miss. All right. And essentially 10-2 at Arkansas State. Incredible 9-win season and a 10-win season there, 2014 and 2015. Won the Sugar Bowl with Chad Kelly, made the Peach Bowl. You remember the Hunter Henry play, which is when Hunter Henry lateraled the football back against Auburn. Ole Miss was that miracle play. If they just beat Arkansas that day, they would have represented the SEC West. So Hugh Freeze had 2 wins against Nick Saban in his prime. Then he went to Liberty, and this dude was incredible at Liberty. He was 34-15 at Liberty, a 10-1 season, Malik Willis was a draft pick at quarterback, so he developed quarterback, whether it was Chad Kelly coming as a Clemson transfer, or whether it was Bo Wallace, whether it was Malik Willis. Like, Malik Willis was an Auburn transfer, and he made Malik Willis into an NFL draft pick, and he was great on the mountain there. So I really root for Hugh Freeze, because Hugh Freeze, we didn't even get to the biggest story of Hugh Freeze's career. The biggest story of Hugh Freeze's career is the scandal of using a university phone and calling prostitutes, calling hookers on his on a university phone, and getting kicked out of Auburn, and having his entire personal life just outlaid into the public eye. And the fact that he then got back into coaching after the cheating allegations and after using a university phone to call those escorts, Hugh Freeze is mentally tough. And I think it's, he often talks about religion, and religion helped him get through it, and he would be the first one to tell you that. But also, Hugh Freeze is a resilient guy. Hugh Freeze is strong-willed. And him going to Liberty was one of the only schools that was forgiving enough to give Hugh Freeze another chance. And I was so happy to see Hugh Freeze get that second chance and pan out the way that he did at Liberty. And I'm rooting for him at Auburn. And that's why it's painful to see these last couple of years with Peyton Thorne, the Scotty Montgomery hire being a horrible hire, terrible turnovers, the field goal kicking being abysmal, Towns Magoo getting injured, and really pissing away that Oklahoma game. That was just so inexcusable. I think that they were up by like 11 points. You're facing a freshman quarterback in Michael Hawkins that could barely complete a forward pass. He probably only completed 4 throws the entire game. One, of course, ends up being a 70-yard touchdown. And then Peyton Thorne, throws a pick six to a linebacker. Brutal. They found ways to lose games. And then I even went to the Auburn-Vanderbilt game. I even went with a couple of buddies. We were on a golf trip. We stopped by that Auburn-Vanderbilt game, and they had no juice. That offense never threw the ball deep down the field. That was one of the worst played games. That team kind of quit on Hugh up until Texas A&M, and then they found it a little bit. But Peyton Thorne was a decent quarterback at Michigan State, had some mobility about him, had a unbelievable freshman season with Mel Tucker, and that offense was just really poor. But you look at Hugh Freeze and you look at the guy's life, and I'm so ready to see Hugh Freeze bounce back. I'm so ready to see the redemption of Hugh Freeze. I'm ready to see Auburn be a good football program again under Hugh Freeze, and watch him ride off into the sunset with his wife, with his daughters, with everybody. That's what I'm excited to see. That's what I'm excited. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to see, is Hugh Freeze redemption story. Because there's a bunch of people that will still hate Hugh Freeze for, the things at Ole Miss, about the paying players, or about the, that'll still kind of mock him over that. And I admire a guy that can get back up on his feet after that all transpired. I love watching second chances and watching guys make good on opportunities. And the one problem with Hugh Freeze throughout this Auburn experience and throughout Ole Miss is that I can point to some flaws with Hugh Freeze. The flaw that I see with Hugh Freeze is that his offense is not a pro-style offense. It's a very RPO-based offense, which means that it's a little there's only several plays in the playbook, and oftentimes, I mean, I wonder if Hugh Freeze can scheme these plays open. All right, I know Art Briles had a similar system, but these defensive coordinators in the SEC, they know a lot of complexity, and I don't know if it's primitive. I don't know if this offense has only like 10 or 15 plays in it. A lot is RPO. A lot seems like basic, Mike Gundy passing concepts. And I don't know if we're seeing screens. I don't know if we're seeing a very pro-style attack. Now, you can, I also don't like watching Mike Bobo in this, like, really complex, playbook of 1,000 plays that doesn't create any fun, explosive plays. I want like an offense like Zach Kittley has, like Mac Leftwich and G.J. Kinney have, where it's like they run the football. It's an air raid sort of scheme. All right. I don't need it to be Will Stein or Kenny Dillingham or the best offenses in college football or Brennan Marion's offense. Like, I just need this offense to be interesting enough, and I need it to be complex enough. I also think his quarterback evaluation of Peyton Thorne was a big failure. And so we need some in-breaking routes. We need different types of routes for Auburn to be effective. So I wonder if Hugh Freeze's offense with Derek Nix, I wonder if these guys can come up with an offense that is like that keeps defenses on their heels and where they're giving their guys, like real advantages in the film room. Like Peyton Thorne, his dad was his dad's an offensive coordinator, great high school coach, and they really couldn't scheme things up. They weren't on the same page. And now Hugh Freeze is in year 3, and he's electing to go with Jackson Arnold at quarterback. Now, Jackson Arnold is kind of from the air raid, that's kind of his bread and butter. Jeff Lebby, down there with Josh Heupel in UCF, and then I guess he took a little bit of what Lane Kiffin had. So Jackson Arnold, though, to me, guys, I'm just gonna keep it 100 with you guys. Like, I always hear about how Jackson Arnold is so talented, how this guy is like a freak in terms of his physical tools. And I watch a lot of Jackson Arnold, and I don't see that. I see a 6'1" quarterback that probably runs a 4.9 or a 4.7 40-yard dash that isn't breaking tackles, that physically doesn't even look that imposing. And then is his accuracy unbelievable? Is his arm strength? Maybe he can throw it 50 yards. But he seems like a Baylor Bryce Petty. He seems like, the guy Seth Roberts at Baylor was just as, as explosive as a player. I think Bryce Petty was just as good. And if you're getting Bryce Petty at quarterback, you're getting a pretty good player. I look at Ashton Daniels at Stanford, and I actually said, like, wow, this kid's actually making intermediate stuff. Like, Ashton Daniels is actually a quarterback that I think is better than Jackson Arnold. And then I look at Deuce Knight, and I'm like, this guy's a lefty. This guy's 6'4". This guy's a powerhouse player. Like, I do see the physical upside in Deuce Knight. I don't really see that with Jackson Arnold. So they brought Jackson Arnold to media day. Like, it would be a lot better if, like, Auburn said, you know what, we're rolling with Jackson is going to be, Jackson's in the lead right now, but Daniels and Deuce Knight are also going to be involved in this quarterback, conversation. They brought him to SEC media day, and frankly, they're paying Jackson Arnold a ton of money to come in and play quarterback. Hugh Freeze said to his boosters, like, I need Jackson Arnold. And bam, the boosters gave him a ton of money. And then they probably got Ashton Daniels just in case Jackson Arnold gets injured. But they're relying on Jackson Arnold. And I view Arnold as an okay quarterback. I would compare him maybe to Texas Tech's like Baron Morton, and I probably even would have Baron Morton ahead of him. So I don't think he's that good. I think he's a below average college quarterback. And now, if maybe an average college quarterback, and if Jackson Arnold is really, really good, I'm going to eat crow on this video. And I'm actually going to be pretty happy eating crow on this video because, again, I'm kind of rooting for the redemption of Hugh Freeze. I love the people at Auburn. Like, I've been there. It's a team that's always been, it's been little brother to Alabama now for about 15 to 20 years, really with Nick Saban. So this is a team that is dying for consistency. And if Hugh Freeze has a 10-win year, Hugh Freeze had to battle cancer this year, and I pray that he's doing better. Hugh Freeze can coach at Auburn for another 7-8 years if they have a great season. But I'm worried about the offense. I'm worried about the creativity on offense, and I'm really worried that they have a very average quarterback in Jackson Arnold. And I'm worried that Jackson might even get replaced by like week 6. So he's going to have to stay healthy this year. I do love their receivers. I'm a huge fan of Cam Coleman. And then Singleton from Georgia Tech is a speedster with production. Like, he was great in the ACC. Those are big-time gets. They also get an offensive lineman from Virginia Tech, a tackle. They have, like, a lot of guys. I think, like, Perry Thompson. I think that they also have, like, another speedster. I think that their wide receivers are really deep, great recruits, and Cam Coleman's are already a star player, just waiting to break out. So Jackson Arnold has to utilize Cam Coleman. Hugh Freeze also went with a Hank Brown, and Hank Brown has a good arm, but he's just incredibly immobile. And that's why the Hank Brown experiment was very, very short-lived on the Plains at Auburn. All right, and then you look at DJ Durkin and this defense, like it's a pretty good defense. When you look at DJ Durkin actually and the defense. So let's look at Auburn's schedule and what we think about the Auburn Tigers. Again, like, I want this Hugh Freeze thing to work. Like, it's fascinating. I give Auburn credit. Like, it took a lot of cojones to go out there and get Hugh Freeze as a football coach. It took a lot of cojones to do it. So here we go. Auburn Tigers schedule. And I'm just reading, actually, I guess Kerryon Johnson, commented about Auburn. So now Auburn's an underdog to Baylor. And now I think Sawyer Robertson's an all right quarterback. I think he's a really good college player. I remember Mike Leach was recruiting him at Mississippi State, one of his final recruits there. Sawyer Robertson's a great guy, just like Jackson Arnold's a really nice, good guy. Sawyer Robertson's more accurate, and also Jake Spavital he's on a heater right now. Like, ever since coming from Cal, like, Spavital has saved Aranda's job after Jeff Grimes came off the ultimate heater with Zach Wilson and totally flamed out and struck out and ruined, like, all of his goodwill, and then had to go to Kansas to be resuscitated. I guess that might be the word. Kind of like Nick Saban would go ahead and the word is when you're drowning in a pool, you go and do CPR. I guess that's the word. Anyway, at Kansas, right? Okay. So, Baylor. I believe that they can beat Baylor. And it might even be an ugly game. I bet both offenses are trash. I could see Auburn losing this game. I would be very surprised if they came out. If Arnold throws for 4 touchdowns and 350 yards, like that, then it's exciting. Then you get a couple of then you get some games at home you should win in Ball State and South Al. Maybe South Al's a little bit tricky. They're a decent Sun Belt program. Then you go to Oklahoma and to Texas A&M. I know you're losing A&M. I have A&M ranked incredibly high. I think A&M might be the second best team in the SEC to LSU. I think A&M's that good. So you have Oklahoma, you have A&M, and then you have Georgia at home. Then you have Missouri at home. Missouri's going to know who they are. So this is a really tough schedule. You also go to Vanderbilt. You have to play at Arkansas, Kentucky, and then Alabama. So it's a brutal schedule. So in all honesty, guys, I have that Baylor game with Dave Aranda and this crew. I think I have Auburn losing this game to Baylor. And then I have Auburn losing to Oklahoma and to Texas A&M. And if you lose that, you're going to be 2-3. Hugh Freeze could be fired at College Station, at Kyle Field. Then you play Georgia. Maybe you roll with Deuce Knight. Deuce Knight could be starting the Georgia game October 11th. I think that's an 8 o'clock kick. Imagine if you start Deuce Knight and the Deuce Knight era, you beat Georgia and you storm the field. That's the only way that this season's getting saved. The way that I look at it is if Deuce Knight is the quarterback. All right. You have the bye week, and then it's Georgia. John Cohen stays this season. Maybe you beat Missouri. Then you maybe go to Arkansas, and you maybe win that game. And if you're able to do that, you're able to get to 7-5, maybe with Deuce. And if you're able to beat Georgia, then you're going to have a great season. But do I see you beating Oklahoma with Jackson Arnold? I would be stunned. There's a possibility they beat Baylor because they have better recruits than Baylor. The Big 12 doesn't recruit like Auburn recruits. Auburn's going to have better athletes. And defensively, Auburn can get after Sawyer Robertson. So I know that the over-under is 56. I would take the under in that football game. These are going to be fresh teams. And Auburn's defense, I mean, we saw with Penn State going to West Virginia. Usually the Big Ten and the SEC win these matchups against Big 12 and ACC. All right, but obviously that's going to set the tone. And then are we going to see Deuce Knight, and could Hugh Freeze survive A&M? Okay, so you got to figure out a way to be 3-1 when you go to Kyle for Hugh Freeze to probably likely survive. It's dicey. I could see Hugh Freeze going like 55, 60%. I could see Hugh Freeze going. Now, John Cohen, very respected AD, and Bruce obviously making the Final Four is massive for him. This is going to be one of the most fascinating seasons of football that we're going to see. It's fascinating because you have a guy in Jackson Arnold who's a 5-star quarterback. Whether I think so or not, you have a 5-star quarterback who went to Oklahoma, who was broken at Oklahoma. You have a guy in Hugh Freeze that's desperate. You have boosters that are desperate. You have Auburn that missed on Brian Harsin and then went out there and spent a lot of money on Hugh Freeze that has been a staple in the South for having good football. And if Hugh Freeze gets fired at Auburn, it's going to impact his legacy. They're going to say, he had a couple of really good years at Ole Miss. The boosters were kind of paying guys out the wazoo. He had some great games against, Saban, but never could amount to the SEC or anything. But if Hugh Freeze at Auburn is a solid football coach and goes on to, have this Deuce Knight thing work or have this thing work with Jackson Arnold, then we're going to look at Hugh Freeze as really like rescuing Auburn and making them like a solid outfit. And this is a legacy-defining year for Hugh Freeze, for Jackson Arnold, for this football program.